Good evening. I'm Reshat Kasaba. I'm the director of the Jackson School of International Studies, and I am very pleased to see so many of you here for this evening's lecture. Before I turn over the podium to my colleague Ken Oshima, I would like to acknowledge several of our guests. Consul General Masahiro Omura of the Consulate General of Japan in Seattle is with us. We're very happy to have him and the support of him and also his staff for not only for this series, but for many of the programs we do in the Jackson School in Japan Studies program at the University of Washington. Thank you very much. We're also honored to have Dean Robert Stacy with us. He's the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and the Jackson School in the Japan Studies exists under his domain, and outside of that, he's been a long-time supporter and a friend of our school and of our programs. So thank you, Bob. Most of all, though, we are very grateful to Mitsubishi Corporation, and in particular, Mr. Shinichiro Kawazoe. He is the Vice President of Mitsubishi Corporation Americas and General Manager of the Seattle branch and his staff. Now, I've had the pleasure of attending these lectures now last year, and this is the first one this year. I am interested in the world, being the director of the school, and I'm interested in Japan, but Japan is not my area of expertise. But I've been really pleased to see the quality of people who came, and I feel that I've learned a lot about Japan, and this has been a very special part of what we do every year in the Jackson School, and we're very grateful to you and to your staff for your support. Thank you very much. So this is the first of 3 lectures we will have this year. Let me just remind you that on April 27, we will have Yoshihiko Miyauchi. He is the senior chairman of the Oryx Corporation, and he will be giving a talk on the changing Japanese company and entrepreneurship. On May 28th, we will welcome Ryosei Kokubun. He is the president of the National Defense Academy of Japan, and he will be talking on rising China and Japan's future, seeking a way to coexist. So these are all exciting events to look forward to, and I'll look forward to seeing you here in the coming months. At this time, I would like to introduce Ken Tadashahi Oshima. He is the professor of architecture. He's a professor of architecture at the College of Built Environments and also the chair of University of Washington's Japan Studies program.
Thank you, Professor Kasaba, and thank you for coming this evening. It's going to be, I think, a really interesting lecture. Representative Kono came just a few days ago, and he should be actually, I understand, at meetings with the Parliament, but is here with us today, and so I think we're extremely privileged to have that. I thank you to all of the distinguished guests, and I think the topic of tonight's talk, Challenges After Fukushima, will really resonate with so many of us. I myself was planning to go to Tokyo just after 3/11, and obviously was not able to go, but the way that paralyzed Tokyo and the nation, I think, still is very much an issue for us in the world. And then taking students a couple weeks later, or actually a couple months later, because still at that point things were not moving, to see a dark Tokyo was really a shock, I have to say, and really highlighting the importance of these issues of energy. When we think about that on the University of Washington campus, perhaps you go by the nuclear reactor building. In 1961, when it was completed, it was the highlight of the program of nuclear energy and the future. When it closed in 1988, it was a very different story. And so how we meet these challenges of development, but also how we manage this ecologically as well as economically, become extremely important for us all. So it's really a pleasure to introduce Representative Taro Kono. He is a part of a dynasty, at least 3 generations of very prominent national politicians, and his grandfather, Ichiro Kono, being a former minister who dealt with the Tokyo Olympics. I understand he was against the 1940 Olympics, but was promoting the 1964 Olympics. His father served as Speaker of the House of Representatives from 2003 to 2009. But I think Taro Kono is really unique. He is truly bilingual, as you will see. He went to prep school in Connecticut and then attended Georgetown and studied comparative politics and understanding the context of communism at that time. But since he's gone on to many different ventures and venues, but here we can see that he is the actually a 6-term Liberal Democratic member of the House of Representatives. And he does represent the 15th district of Kanagawa Prefecture. In the 2012 general election, he received the largest number of votes of any of the candidates in the election. So he really is a rock star, I would say. In 2002, he was appointed Parliamentary Secretary for Public Management with responsibilities including administrative reforms, local government matters, and e-government. Kono also served in Prime Minister Koizumi's final government as Senior Vice Minister of Justice from November 2005 to September 2006. Until the parliament was dissolved in August of 2009, he served as the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Representatives. He has also championed consumer issues in the LDP since he successfully established the new labeling rules on genetically modified organisms and sponsored the Consumer Protection Law of 2004 and enacted the Anti-Skimming Law of 2005. He has played a leading role in the passage of legislation on various environmental issues and as a strong advocate of the Kyoto Protocol. He has led the debate on global warming issues, enacting anti-chlorofluorocarbons law of 2001. It's in that context that we will focus on the challenges after Fukushima. Representative Kono.
Good evening. Are you in the right room? Gosh, I'm overwhelmed. I would like to, before I start my talk, I would like to thank you all for your support in Fukushima and Tohoku. What you have done in the time of difficulty meant a lot to us, and I'd like to thank you all for that. And I also like to thank Mitsubishi Corporation and the University of Washington and the Jackson School for inviting me to come to Seattle to give this talk and letting me skip first 3 days of parliamentary session. This is, the emperor invited a member of the parliament to the first day, and I never skipped it, but this is the first time I did it. So thank you very much for Kawazoe-san for that. I'm supposed to be talking about Japan's energy challenge after Fukushima. My time is limited, so I'll try to focus on nuclear issues in Japan. And if I have some time left, I will talk about the other issues as well. Ask me any questions. March 11, 2011, I was in the meeting at the National Parliamentary Library when an earthquake hit Tokyo. You probably heard what happened in Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Daiichi means first in Japanese, so we simply call it F1. F1 is Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. There are 6 nuclear reactors in F1 site, and reactor number 1 to number 4 melted down on that day, and we're still working on to clean up the debris and a lot of things. It will probably take another 30, 40 years. We lost 2 people last week, not because of the radiation. It was simply accident on site. So it's really messy there. So everyone knows what happened March 11, 2011. Oops, it doesn't. How do I do this? Hit. Okay. All right. So does anyone know what happened November 2nd, 1978? Probably nobody, I don't expect. I asked the same question in Tokyo, and someone said, oh, that's my birthday. Well, it was probably the happiest day for him and his family, but it wasn't really the happiest day for Japan's energy industry, because on November 2nd, in Fukushima, the nuclear reactor number 3, which no longer exists, they did some kind of operation in reactor number 3, and 5 of their control rods, which control the chain reaction in the reactor, simply fell off. So because of that, there was uncontrolled nuclear chain reaction went on for 7.5 hours. That was the first nuclear accident of this magnitude in Japan. Well, it was okay, it was controlled after 7 hours, but what happened is TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power Company, simply covered up this accident. There was no entry in their log. They reported to nobody. And they just simply told the crew to shut up about it. So no one knows about this accident for the next 29 years. So November 2nd, 1978, that was the accident, and simply control rod fell off and chain reaction. And they didn't tell anybody. And it so happened that if you do on certain reactors, certain operation on the reactor, control rod fall off. There must be something wrong with design, or I don't know, but that is the case. And the first of that accident happened in 1978, and they didn't tell anybody about that. So what happened is, next year, February, in F1, in a different nuclear reactor, same accident happened. What do? You simply cover up. So 1980, on F1, the same accident happened, but the crew didn't know about the previous accidents. So it simply got into the third accident. Now what do? You don't tell anybody. Then Tohoku Electric Power in Onagawa nuclear power plant got a same type of reactor, and same accident happened. And they didn't tell anybody. So 1991, Chubu, which is different power company based in Nagoya, had the same accident. They simply cover up. 93, Fukushima 2, the Fukushima Daini, got the same accident. And TEPCO had another accident, and F1, after 20 years, they got the same accident, and simply nobody knows about it. And 1999, in Shiga, they got another uncontrolled chain reaction. And it goes until number 11. And then finally, 2007, somebody in Shiga nuclear power plant blew the whistle. They came forward to the ministry and said, well, some years ago, we had a same accident. And the ministry didn't believe it at the beginning. But ministry told every power company to report if they had a same kind of accident. And then TEPCO came forward, 29 years ago. So that's the history and that's the culture. So accident in Fukushima in 2011 is not an independent one. So let me go into the nuclear power. Probably everyone knows that you use uranium fuel, and you put it in the nuclear reactor and you burn it, and you generate power. And the uranium fuel becomes spent fuel. And you take out the spent fuel, well, it's a problem where you dump it, but you simply replace the fuel with a new one. And that's what you do in the United States and what you do in the most countries except Japan for nuclear power. Well, our nuclear policy is a little different because back in 1950s and 60s when we are debating what we should do with the nuclear power, the problem we are facing is oil. We don't have any oil. We have to import 100% of the crude oil. And what happened if something happened to the supply chain? The Japanese economy go down. And they were saying in near future, we will run out of the oil. Entire globe will run out of oil. Then what do we do? So we thought, the Japanese government thought, it would be better to have alternative. And a viable alternative to the crude oil back then was nuclear. So I think it was sensitive to start a nuclear program. But the thing is, we don't have uranium in Japan. We have to import all the uranium fuel. And you are supposed to run out of uranium. People say different things, but maybe 70 years. So we are moving out of oil into uranium, but we will be facing the same problem. So we thought we will do things somewhat differently. This is the Japanese nuclear program called the nuclear fuel cycle. You burn uranium in a reactor, you get the spent fuel. You don't dump it, you reprocess it, meaning you melt spent fuel and separate plutonium out of the rest. And you get the plutonium and you develop the fast breeder reactor. And you put the plutonium fuel in the fast breeder reactor. You generate power, and the kilo of plutonium you put in will become 1.2 kilo. You increase the amount of plutonium in the fast breeder reactor. So if we complete this cycle, Japan will have to worry about electricity for next 2,000 years. It's a great idea. So from the beginning, that was the policy of Japan. We will complete this nuclear fuel cycle. And it would have been good, but it doesn't go that way, right? Well, when we started nuclear program back in 1967, we came up with a long-term nuclear plan. And back in 1967, we said, in 20 years, we will complete the first breeder reactor for commercial use, meaning 1987. This horizontal bars, you go from bottom to the top. Sorry, my staff made a mistake. The left edge of the horizontal bar indicate the year of the long-term planning for the nuclear. And right edge of the horizontal bar indicate the year that fast breeder reactor supposed to be completed. So 1967, we said in 20 years. And then 5 years later, we revised the plan in 1972. And the plan says in 20 years, although 5 years already passed. And 1978, the plan said in 30 years, we will complete the first breeder reactor. And it goes on, and 1987, that year supposed to, we were supposed to have fast breeder reactor completed. 1987 plan says in 2020, we might have fast breeder reactor. So we never get closer to the completion of the fast breeder reactor. And in 1995, we got the sodium leakage at the pilot plant. It got the huge fire, and entire program has shut down since. And it hasn't been moving forward. And 2005 plan says not before 2050. So every year, we spend $200 million to keep the pilot plant sitting idle safely. I'm a chief budget cutter for LDP right now, and every year I propose to cut the budget for fast breeder reactor, and they say they can't do it because we have to have the at least program. Because we have so much plutonium already. We send spent fuel to UK and France from the beginning for reprocessing to get the plutonium out. So we have plutonium already, and if we don't have fast breeder reactor, we cannot explain to the world why we have so much plutonium. So even if it's not moving, we have to pretend to have the program. And we spend $200 million just to pretend. Kind of crazy. So we have 47 tons. Now it's approaching 48. And the 48 tons of plutonium we have is larger than what you have on top of nuclear weapons in the United States. And North Korea often have nuclear threat. They have 50 kilograms of plutonium, and we are trying to force them into six-party talk, right? So Mr. Kim wants Japan to be in 6 Southern Party talks, I guess. So this is the situation. The nuclear fuel cycle is not going well. And we need to deal with 47 tons of plutonium. We just cannot simply hold on to it because you can make nuclear weapons out of it. And all you need is 8 kilo of plutonium. You can make one bomb. And we have 48 tons. So the power industries and the ministry, the METI, came up with something called plutonium thermal. You take uranium fuel, you take uranium and you basically mix it with plutonium. 90% uranium and 10% plutonium, which is called a MOX fuel. And you don't have fast breeder reactor, so you simply place the MOX fuel into the regular nuclear reactor. You simply burn the MOX fuel and generate power. If you burn plutonium in the fast breeder reactor, you don't have to worry about next 2,000 years. What about burning MOX fuel in a nuclear reactor? You save 10% of uranium. So if uranium is to last 70 years, you don't have to worry about for next 77 years. But in order to get 7 years, you spend 12 trillion yen on this program. It's not economical. But you have to do it, otherwise you just cannot explain to the people and you cannot explain to the President Obama what we're going to do with those plutonium. So we are just pretending. There are too many pretending because we have to pretend that we're going to have fast breeder reactor. We're going to pretend we're going to do something with plutonium. But simple reality is we just stuck with it. So I think the first thing we need to do is we have to admit that nuclear fuel cycle is failure, but the government and the power industry are afraid to admit it. And then we have if you separate the plutonium, what you have is what you call a high-level nuclear waste. It is very radioactive, and you have to do something with it. And the United States even has a problem what to do with it. Simply, you have to dig deep. You have to dig 500 meter deep, and you bury it for next 100,000 years. So you have to find a place for next 100,000 years to keep it without worrying about earthquake, volcano, underground water. Where can we find in Japan that you don't have to worry about earthquake for next 100,000 years? It's a very difficult question. And there's lots of volcano erupting. The volcano in Japan said to be entering the active age and underground water. So what do you do? Plus, if you look back 100,000 years, the shape of the Japanese islands look totally different So in next 100,000 years, Japan will probably look very different from today. So where are we going to bury it for next 100,000 years? And that's the biggest problem. Oops. So we don't know, and we have to admit. And then the problem is, well, we're supposed to reprocess in Japan. Well, until the President Carter, we were not allowed to reprocess spent fuel in Japan because sort of if you get the plutonium, you can develop the nuclear weapons. And those 5 countries that had a monopoly over nuclear weapon wouldn't allow any other country to reprocess. So the Japanese government started a negotiation with President Ford. And when President Carter came on, we made a deal with the United States. And we are now allowed to do the reprocessing in Japan. So we are trying to build a reprocessing plant in Aomori Prefecture, which was supposed to be completed 2004, and this is 2015, and we have not been able to complete it. So we are saying we're going to reprocess, but we can't do this. And this is another problem. There is simply no need for plutonium now because we're not going to get the fast breeder reactor. So we simply cannot burn plutonium. So there's no need for reprocessing. And reprocessing costs a lot of money. And it's not economically viable. And it will create a terrorist-friendly environment because spent fuel is very dangerous. It's highly radioactive. So if you get closer to spent fuel, you can just get yourself killed. But if you separate plutonium, it's much safer. You can put the plutonium in a paper bag and put in your pocket in the jacket, and you can just walk away. So it's a very terrorist-friendly product, and you wouldn't want to do it unless you really have to. And there's a South Korean factor. Well, South Korean government now talking to the American government that they should have the same right as Japan has. So they are demanding that South Korea be allowed to do reprocess. I don't think it's going to be economical for South Korean industry either, but I think it's not an economy. It's just a sort of national pride. If Japan does, South Koreans should be able to do it. I talked to Mr. Richard Armitage, the former #2 in the State Department, and he doesn't want South Korea to do reprocessing because if you let the South Korea reprocess, then South Africa is raising their hand and they want to do it. If South Korea can do it, why can't South Africa? So if you push a domino, it will be a reprocessing domino, and in 10 years, everyone should have plutonium for a nuclear bomb. So Mr. Richard Armitage was wondering why Japan can stop reprocessing. And I think it's very sensitive. It's no use for the Japanese, so I think we simply should give up. But the government and the power industry cannot stop reprocessing because, when the power companies built a nuclear power plant in Japan, there are 54 nuclear reactors, minus 4 reactors in F1, so there's a 50. When they built those nuclear power plants, they promised local government that no nuclear waste will stay there. They will just simply take out all the nuclear waste away. And their plan was to bring all the nuclear spent fuel to Aomori Prefecture for reprocessing. So they built a huge spent fuel pool in Aomori Prefecture, and they kept moving spent fuel from the nuclear power plant to the Aomori reprocessing plant. And they are not able to run the reprocessing plant yet. Their spent fuel pool in Aomori Prefecture is already filled up. So they are not able to move any spent fuel out of a nuclear power plant to Aomori Prefecture. And the size of the spent fuel pool in each nuclear power plant is limited. So what's going to happen is, well, number one, there's no need for plutonium, so logically speaking, you shouldn't reprocess spent fuel. But if you don't reprocess spent fuel, or if you announce that you're not going to reprocess spent fuel, there's a deal between the power companies and the Japanese government and Aomori Prefecture that if spent fuel brought in Aomori will not be reprocessed, the power company will take all of them out of the prefecture. So if they announce that they're not going to reprocess spent fuel, if they say, well, there's a change of plan, then the Aomori Prefecture governor could force power companies to take out all the spent fuel. And the power company have promised the local government where nuclear power plants are that they will not leave any nuclear waste behind. So they cannot take them back to the original place, but they have nowhere to go. So they will simply have to put the spent fuel on a huge truck and let it run around Japan forever. And that's not practical. So they simply cannot say that they will not reprocess. It's kind of crazy. It's another, ooh. So what's going to happen is spent fuel will overflow in the spent fuel pool in each nuclear power plant. Oops. So that's the situation on March 10th, 2011. If there had not been any accident in Fukushima, what could have happened is each nuclear power plant will overflow with their spent fuel. And if that happens, you have to shut down their nuclear power plant there. And almost all the nuclear power plant in Japan cannot take more than 10-year worth of spent fuel. The shorter one, the Genkai power plant in Kyushu, could only last for 3 years. And they are planning to restart. So after 3 years, they would have to shut down the nuclear reactor there. So if there had not been an accident in Fukushima, all the nuclear reactor in Japan could have been shut down in 10 years. That was the situation the day before Fukushima. Oops. Well, you can actually pull out spent fuel out of a pool and put in a so-called a dry cask. But they wouldn't want to do that because putting spent fuel in dry cask sort of indicate it will stay there for many years to come. And the power company worried about each local government would cry out. So they simply denying the dry cask alternative. And putting spent fuel in a pool in a nuclear power plant is very dangerous because probably now ISIS found out that they don't really have to attack the nuclear reactor itself. All you have to do is just throw dynamite into the spent fuel pool, and that will contaminate big region for many years to come. So keeping the spent fuel in a pool is something you don't want to do. So the best way is to take it out, put it in a dry cask, and it would be much safer. But they cannot do that because then the local government would think they are breaking the promises. And then the nuclear reactor accident. So even without the Fukushima accident, the Japanese nuclear policy got stuck. And we had to stop and rethink what we're going to do with our nuclear program. I came to the parliament back in 1996, and it was a situation like this. We just didn't have a Fukushima accident, but we were not going to get the fast breeder reactor. We got stuck with huge stockpile of plutonium, And we have no place to put the nuclear waste. Reprocessing plant wasn't working, and the spent fuel was just about to overflow in each nuclear power plant. So what I did is I simply raised the issue in the LDP party meeting. Well, the nuclear fuel cycle is not, they just don't add up. So we better stop and rethink about our future. What are we going to do with nuclear program? And then the most senior politician in the room looked at me with strange expression on his face, and he simply said, "Are you communist?" And I say, well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if I'm a liberal Democrat or a communist, it doesn't really matter about your ideology. It's not moving at all. And sooner or later, there's a problem, and sooner or later, the nuclear power plant will start shutting down, and then what are we going to do? So we better stop and think. Well, until today, there's no answer from anybody. And people talking about, hey, Taro Kono is a bit strange when it comes to the nuclear issues. Well, some people say Taro Kono is strange, period. But what do you expect? I'm educated in the United States, right? So even without Fukushima accident, it's not going forward. And Fukushima accident was very unfortunate, but it gave us time to think about what we're going to do with nuclear program in Japan. And we are wasting time. All right, this is the, we have a wholesale market for electricity in Japan, which is not well known. And each vertical bar indicate the volume of traded electricity every day, each day. The red line is March 11. You can tell right after March 11, the volume traded in the wholesale market went down drastically. Well, on March 11, all the nuclear power plants shut down. So at least for TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power Company. So you would think that more electricity would be traded on the wholesale market because you would be worried about electric supply. But it has gone down. What TEPCO did is they deny access to their grid. All the grid in Japan is captive. So within TEPCO area, it's TEPCO property. And TEPCO simply told everybody that they cannot use grid to sell the whole electricity at the wholesale market. So the market collapsed. And what they did is they went to each power generator. Well, if you want to sell the electricity, I pay you this much. And they offer a very cheap price. So either you sell me at this price or you don't sell electricity to anybody. And on the other hand, they were forcing some blackout in their area. A friend of mine who was supposed to go through the surgery, unfortunately on that Monday, he was on the operation table and there was a blackout in the hospital. And the emergency light came on, but the operation was called off. There was a traffic light went out and there was a traffic accident. The people actually got killed. But this is what happened. And this is what it kind of looked like in Japan, the Japanese electricity market. This is Okinawa. This is off the grid. Oops, I touched somebody. The size of the circle means the amount of power that each company generate. So you can tell TEPCO is a dominant power company, but simply Western Japan and Eastern Japan use different frequency. So TEPCO cannot really supply to the Western Japan, and the power companies in West Japan are not really able to supply to the Eastern Japan. It's kind of funny system, but it helps Kansai or Chubu from TEPCO invasion. And they wanted it that way. And those 9 companies on mainland give them regional monopoly. So this is the core of the problem. Nine power company on the mainland, they got the regional monopoly, and their grids are captive, and their prices are guaranteed. They can recover all the cost, and they're even guaranteed 3% profit on top of it. And they wanted to keep that. So what they did is they simply bribed everybody. This is LDP, my party. There's a lot of political contribution coming from power companies, maybe except me, unfortunately. You wonder why. DPJ, Democratic Party of Japan, the previous government, they get the support from labor union of the power companies. So the union votes and union money come to DPJ. The METI is a sort of regulating ministry or promoting ministry. Their bureaucrats, once they retire, get a job with power companies. Basically, one of the senior vice president of TEPCO comes from METI, traditionally. The media is also bribed. 9 power company combined, they are spending almost as much as Toyota or Panasonic for the TV commercial. Why would you want to buy TV commercial when you have regional monopoly? You cannot, if you're living in Tokyo, you cannot buy electricity from anyone else. A friend of mine from UK was worried about, he was surprised to watch TEPCO having so much TV commercial. And then a year later, he kind of began to understand the Japanese. So he now listened to the TV commercial. So TEPCO commercial said, well, you need to maximize efficiency when you use electricity. So TEPCO is actually paying not to buy their product. Doesn't make sense, but that's what they need. They're simply bribing the media. And the corporations, well, power company could recover all the cost by law. So it doesn't really matter how much they pay to purchase what's necessary. So they are a good customer for many of the Japanese corporations. So corporations support, a lot of corporations supports the current power policy in Japan. And the universities. Well, unfortunately, if you're a nuclear professor in the Japanese universities, your students, when they graduate, get a job with either power company or nuclear plant manufacturer. So they cannot criticize power companies. Plus, they get a lot of money for their research. And there's an inspection agency, it's a government agency that's supposed to inspect the nuclear reactors. They don't have enough expertise. So used to be, power companies wrote inspection manual, and the agency put just the first page on top of it, and that was a manual. And when engineers retire early from power company, they go to inspection agency. So who they listen to? Not their boss. They listen to the power companies. And so that's why everything is so messed up. So there are questions after Fukushima. Who should cover the cost of accident? There's a huge amount of compensation, and there's a huge amount of cost. And who's paying for those? It's consumer in TEPCO territory mostly, and the tax. And TEPCO still listed company, and they making profit. So if something happens at the nuclear reactors next, who should cover the cost? And I was sort of raising the issue that they need to be sort of insured. The insurance company came to me, don't say that because we have no intention to insure the nuclear reactors in Japan anymore. So I'm trying to ask the power company to set aside a certain amount of money so that they can cover the cost of accident for the next, but they're not doing it. And then how to deal with the nuclear waste. Spent fuel, high-level nuclear waste, plutonium, what are we going to do with it? And we have time to think about it, but we're not doing it. And what is the real cost of the nuclear power? The government and power company have been saying the nuclear is the cheapest energy sources for many years. But now they're saying they might have to introduce feed-in tariff for nuclear energy. If it's cheapest energy sources, why would you need a feed-in tariff? Everyone will go to the nuclear, but they really now worried about it. And can we evacuate if something happens to the local nuclear power plant? Well, the power company or local government are talking about it, and the local government came up with evacuation plans. Well, the plan says everyone should go to designated park and get on the bus, and the bus will take you to whatever. But what if people start driving? There'll be a traffic jam. And the evacuation plan says no one drives, so they have no plan if they start driving. What about those people who are in the hospital? What are those senior citizens who cannot really walk to the park? Their plan doesn't say anything. So there's a lot of evacuation plans by the local government, but is it really viable? We don't know. But the government and power industry are really in a hurry to restart the reactor. And they are saying, well, the trade deficit in Japan is sky high, and it's because the nuclear power has stopped. Or the electricity cost is going up. Or carbon emission is increasing because the nuclear is out. So we have to restart the nuclear reactor. That's their argument. It's partially true. I don't deny that. But if you look at the numbers, total import cost of natural gas, 2010, before the accident, it was 3.4 trillion yen. And 2013, it's more than double. So we're paying a lot of money. And the trade deficit was almost like 1 trillion yen a month. So it's not only natural gas, but the thing is, the import quantity of the gas only went up 25%. It's not the import quantity has doubled. It's only went up 25%. What went up is the gas price, and the yen depreciate. So weaker yen and the higher price of natural gas led to higher cost in yen. And that's the cause of the trade deficit. So even if you start a nuclear power, we still rely on the natural gas. So the trade deficit will not go away. And now the crude oil price is going down, so the gas price is coming down. It's not right to blame everything on the nuclear shutdown. And this is something, the yellow line is gas price, and the blue line, the second from the bottom, is gas import quantity. And the black line in the middle is how much we are paying for the gas. So you can tell the price matters more than quantity. So even if you restart, we still have to pay a lot of money on the gas. Well, they blame the higher electricity bill on nuclear shutdown. But if you look at, well, this is all 10 power company, and this is the price, the electricity bill in 2011 and 2014. And if you compare those, if you look at the Okinawa, they don't have nuclear power. And even Okinawa Power Company, which has no nuclear power, had to raise 12% because the gas price and oil price went up. Hokuriku has a nuclear power, and it had to shut down. But their price increase is lower than Okinawa. And if you look at some power companies that had to shut down the nuclear power, it's not that much difference between Okinawa. So if you look at Tokyo Electric, TEPCO, or Kansai, they raise a lot of price. So it is not by nuclear shutdown. It has more to do with mismanagement, I think. And this is this is what 9 power company uses to generate for fossil fuels. You can tell around 1985, they're heavily relying on coal. This is coal, this is oil, this is natural gas. So about 1985, they start increasing the use of coal because it's cheap. And they are talking about more carbon emissions. And this is a history of TEPCO's carbon emission. And it went up. It shot up actually 2003. What happened in 2003 is they got caught in another scandal about the nuclear power. This is a General Electric engineer blew the whistle that TEPCO is altering the log entry and the other reports. So ministry told TEPCO to shut down all the nuclear power. This is not the one that I talked at the beginning. This is a different scandal. So 2007, they had to shut down all the nuclear power in the TEPCO territory, and the carbon emission went sky high. And it came back. And 2007, there was an earthquake in Niigata, and the Kashiwazaki nuclear power plant had to shut down, and the carbon emission went up. And then it came down, and then Fukushima 2011, and it went up. So simply, the power company, all they had to do is they don't do anything but run the nuclear power plant to reduce the carbon emissions. They increase the use of coal, and they don't do anything else but to start the nuclear power to reduce the carbon emissions. So, I mean, if they talk about climate change, they got to do something about it other than just simply relying on the nuclear power. And they don't have any plans to change it. So trade deficit, yes, maybe. High electricity bill, maybe. Carbon emissions, maybe. But these are just a pretext to restart the nuclear power. There is a real reason behind. The electricity price in Japan is controlled. The power company can add all the cost, and they can recover all the cost. And they are allowed to add 3% of fixed asset on top of it for profit. It's a strange equation, but 3% of fixed asset, I don't know if it makes sense or not. So if you compare a nuclear power plant and a natural gas power plant, nuclear power plant's fixed asset is 10 times larger. So 3% of that is 10 times larger. So if they can run nuclear power plant, they can add more profit to it, and that's what they want. But they're ashamed to say that, so they talk about trade deficit or carbon emissions. Plus, they were supposed to set aside certain amount of money for decommission for each nuclear reactors, and they have not been doing it. So the lack of sufficient allowance for decommission of a nuclear power plant, if they are not allowed to restart the nuclear reactors, and if they have to decommission all those nuclear reactors, half of power company will go down because of that, and government need to rescue them. So that's why they are trying to hurry. I'll skip the last one. Well, we simply cannot go back to the fossil fuel. This is what it looks like 2000 and 2011. The green is 2000 and the blue bar is 2011. And this is something that looked like in 2035. United States will have a shale, so you don't have to import much from Middle East. There's going to be China and India buying oil. Well, this is just oil, but oil and natural gas, they are scrambling for Middle East to secure the energy. And this is sea lines of communication for China. They even building the port in Myanmar and pipeline, so they don't have to go through the Strait of Malacca. And right now, this sea lines of communication is secured by the American 7th Fleet, thanks to them, and we are happy for that situation, and it's not a happy situation for China. And we are worried about if U.S. defense budget is cut back, they need to reduce their forces somewhere. And 10 years ago, if you go to Washington, everyone in State Department and Pentagon talking about the stability in the Middle East is a vital interest to the United States because U.S. economy will be depending on the oil and gas from the Middle East. That was 10 years ago. But now because of the shale, they don't care. They don't have to import much from the Middle East. So we seriously worry about U.S. commitment in the Middle East will disappear. And if there's a vacuum in the sea, we know who's going to fail. And that is not a good situation for Japan. So that's something we need alliance for. So I'm running out of time, so 2-3 more slides. What do we do? We need to stop reprocess right away. I mean, separating plutonium is just costing us, and it doesn't do anyone any good. So what the Prime Minister has to do is go up to the Aomori Prefecture and apologize to the governor. Sorry, we have to change the national policy, but we cannot take out all the spent fuel because it's going nowhere. And we'll probably have to pay additional fee to keep the spent fuel in Aomori Prefecture, and then we start talking about putting spent fuel in dry cask and place it somewhere. We gotta find a place. We'll probably need to allocate dry cask according to the electricity coming from the nuclear power. So Tokyo will get 1,000 dry cask, Kanagawa get 800 or something like that. We need to deal with it. And we need to deregulate the energy market. We have to break up the regional monopoly on those vested interests in the power industry. It's not only the electricity, it'll be the gas too. We need to find an alternative gas supply. The gas coming in Asia, it's a long-term contract. It's take or pay. You have to pay anyway, and it's up to you if you're going to take it or not. And you are not allowed to resell the gas to someone else. So it's costing a lot of money, and it's Asia premium. And we are now importing shale from the United States, but we need to liquefy it, and we need to go through the Panama Canal. So the transportation costs will be added. It won't be that cheap, but we have a bargaining power vis-a-vis Qatar or Abu Dhabi. I'd love to see the Northern Ireland territory issue solved between Japan and Russia and get the pipeline and get the gas in the pipeline. The problem is we don't have a domestic pipeline. So even if we get the pipeline from Russia to Hokkaido, then we cannot distribute the gas after that. So we got to think about it. We need to maximize efficiency. Right after the Fukushima accident, we reduced the electricity consumption by 15% right away, overnight. And it's still down. And if we changed all the light bulb into LED, that's additional 9%. So we have a lot of way to do it without putting much pressure on everyday life. So we need to really maximize efficiency. We need to increase the renewable. The power company and the ministry sort of hate the renewable because it will threaten the nuclear power. So they are now refusing to get the renewable into their grid. We are trying to solve the issue. We are hoping that we can start up a lot more geothermal. We have a third largest geothermal capacity after United States and Indonesia. Geothermal is very stable, not like solar, it runs 24/7. And it's stabler than wind, so we are hoping. But the problem is there are a lot of hot springs, onsen all over Japan, and they are located close to geothermal places. And they are worried about someone come to near them, start drilling deep, and their onsen may run out. So we need to get their okay to start the geothermal. That is the biggest headache right now. We need to reduce the dependency on the fossil fuel. We'll probably need to move out of oil and coal first. We'll probably need to rely on natural gas for some time into the future. And let's decide how long we're going to rely on nuclear now so we can promote the natural gas, and we need to maximize efficiency, and we need to increase the renewable. 40 years is... The blue line is what I said before the Fukushima accident, and red line is what we say after Fukushima. Well, if we don't add any more nuclear reactors, and if we start decommissioning nuclear reactors after 40 years, this is something that looks like blue line before Fukushima. And after Fukushima, well, we lost the 4 reactors there, and there are a certain number of reactors which considered to be dangerous, and they should not be restarted. So it will look like red line. And as each reactor run out of their life, we need to decommission. So by 2050, we go nuclear free. And it's a long enough time to maximize efficiency and long enough time to increase the renewable. So the future should look like this. We need to move out of nuclear, and we need to move out of coal and oil. We may still continue to rely on natural gas for some time into the future, but we will maximize the usage of renewable, and we need to maximize efficiency. And it's good for the Japanese economy, because the third arrow of the Abenomics is deregulation. If we deregulate the economy, the renewable energy is more decentralized one. So right now, a lot of people pay their electricity bill to 9 major companies situated in Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, Sendai, or whatever. But if you move out of that, if you increase the renewable, you'll be paying your bill to local company in your local town, and they will be investing locally. So the money flow will be different, and that would help the local economy going, and that will create a lot of new technology going, and a lot of new industry should go if we deregulate the electricity market. So that's what we need to do. But Prime Minister Abe loves nuclear power, so he goes around making nuclear deal with Turkey, Vietnam, UAE, whatnot. His wife hates nuclear. I know that much, so I agree with her more than her husband. That's why I'm not in the cabinet yet, unfortunately. So I'm running out of time, so I will stop here, and I love to take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Kono, for that very provocative talk. I think there are many issues that raise questions that all of us have. We do have until 8:30 to ask questions. And just to start off, I have one burning question myself. Seeing the whole context as an architect, many different regions have benefited from nuclear power through cultural centers, other projects that have gone into the area through the money that the power plants have indirectly or directly provided. But looking at these regional differences, and we talked about Aomori, but Fukushima has been more economically challenged, and other places. It's one thing to do that in a region that is thriving economically, but for areas that are more challenged, how can this be a future? When we look at it monolithically in Japan, it's one thing, but where we do have these really hard-pressed regions for many reasons, what would you respond to in that regard?
Thank you. All the nuclear reactors have been built where economically challenged regions in Japan, simply because the government will give them a lot of subsidies. The power company give them a lot of money so that they could build a nuclear power plant. What they have done is they use those money for very short-term interest, meaning they start building. So they built a lot of indoor swimming pools, big library, or big opera house, or whatever. And it helped construction industry in those regions, and they were happy. And a lot of local politicians usually have construction company or related companies, so the politician are happy at the locally. But if you build a big indoor swimming pool, you have to maintain it. If you build a big opera house that no one uses, you still have to pay for the electricity and all those things. And it became burden to the local government financially at the end of the day. So what they did is they invited another reactor be built the region so they could get more money. I mean, if you look at the Fukushima Daiichi, it has 6 nuclear reactors. And Fukushima Daini have additionally several. So if you look at the nuclear power plants, that's the history. You get a lot of money, you run out of it, you build another one, and you get the money. So it's not really helping the local economy. It's just a short-term thing. They should have invested in something like education or something. We need to take care of the economy of those towns. Yes, we simply cannot say, sorry, we're leaving. We cannot do that. And we need to, I think the government need to make sure that they understand that we will take care of it, but it's not going to be the short-term interest. We will invest something which lasts longer, and that's something we have to do.
So we do have microphones on the sides, and so if you do have questions, please raise your hand, and we will come over. Actually, Don?
Two questions. I'm Professor Don Hillman. I'm a student of Japanese foreign policy for many years, and a common theme was something called a nuclear allergy. It referred to the non-nuclear bomb predisposition of the Japanese people. And I have trouble answering questions from students when I say Japan is a nuclear allergy, but they're building nuclear power plants the way you have described them very eloquently. And I wondered, now that you have more plutonium stored than the United States, why countries like China are very upset that the nuclear option remains as a thing. And so the first question is simply failing to address this issue and the inconsistencies inherent in it is a problem for Japanese foreign policy. The second question really is Russia, and you alluded to the possibility of the Kuril Islands and the pipeline. And you know, Russia has lots of resources, and it would be, as I understand, Mr. Abe is doing his best to try to solve this one. Would you care to comment on that, what your assessment of the prospects are? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Before the Fukushima accident, the media really never reported anything about a nuclear power policy. So people really don't know the situation. They probably had a reprocessing or fast breeder reactor or spent fuel, but they don't really connect in one big picture. So not many people understand what the hell's going on. And after the Fukushima accident, the power company are not giving money to the newspaper or television station. They start now reporting. And so people now understand the whole picture. And if you have an opinion poll, more than 70% of Japanese are opposed to the nuclear power, or they pro sort of moving out of nuclear. Not many people say shut it down tomorrow, but I think they agree into the sometime future we go nuclear free. I used to say 40 years, let's go nuclear free, and they thought I'm crazy. Now I said the same thing, by 2050 we go nuclear free. A lot of people say it's too slow, we're gonna move quicker. So time changes. We really have to deal with plutonium issues because, I don't think we're going to get nuclear option forever. But there's some crazy politicians, sometime, and they come on TV and we should get nuclear weapons. And then my Korean friend says, see, I told you. So what I tell them is, all right, tell me where we can have nuclear testing in Japan. That solved the question, right? Number two, the Northern Ireland. We're talking about the 4 islands of Hokkaido, and I think it's time for us to make a compromise. We're not going to get the 4 islands back. And if we keep saying we want 4 islands back, we're probably not going to get any. So we may be happy with 2. We're going to be extremely happy 3. It's going to be a perfect game if we get the 50-50. And so it's time to make compromise. And if we finish that business, we can talk about natural gas or other resources or development in Siberia and putting pressure on China from both sides. And so there's a lot of national interest. And we should talk to Russia. So I don't think we should stuck with 4 islands.
I think there was a question from Andrea.
So helpful. I have a rather simple question, but I hope that it's not too difficult to answer. And the question is, do you give the same kind of talk in Japan?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
A lot. I told the party...
I'm wondering what the reaction to it is, because it's incredibly straightforward, and not that I think there aren't a lot of straightforward speaking people in Japan, but this is a complicated issue, and it indicts a lot of different interests, and that's what I wonder what I think we talked a little bit about.
A lot of people say they never heard about this. So, and they often say, how come I don't know all those things? And I say, well, no one never really reported it. So in order to come to Seattle this time, I need a permission to, you need a permission to leave the country if you are MP, for the session. So I need to tell the party leadership, this is going to be my talk. And I also need permission from the speaker. So I told basically all the party members that this is my talk. So opposition members are very happy to let me go, and they are wondering if LDP will. But I'm here.
Marie?
I have 2 general questions. One is, what do you see the impact of Fukushima on distrust in the Japanese government by the average Japanese citizen? The second one is, what does the process you've explained tell us about the decision-making process in Japan?
Well, right after the accident, right after the first report of the accident or something happening in reactors in Fukushima, a lot of university professors of nuclear engineering get on TV, and they kept saying, oh, this is just a minor accident, nothing to worry about. And then we saw the building blow up. And a lot of American experts told me, it has to be meltdown because no reactor can be strong enough to hold it after so many hours. So all the nuclear fuel rod must have been melted down and melted through and TEPCO denied it for many, many days. So a lot of people lost credibility after this. And then media sort of start reporting it. And then people realize what media hasn't really talked about. And then the politician, we sort of promoted this whole thing. So, but the funny thing is, we had a general election twice, and the upper house election. The nuclear didn't become issue for the elections. Only time it became partial issue was Tokyo's governor's election, simply because two former prime ministers tried to raise it, but they lost. So that's about it. What was the second question?
About Japan's decision-making process.
Oh. It really hasn't changed. Funny thing is, the thing is, in U.S., in the Senate and the House, they vote, right? And there's a voting record. So you can tell Congressman so-and-so voted in yes or no on certain bill. Senator, whoever voted for or voted against on what issue. In Japan, there's no voting record. There's no voting record, except when you choose a prime minister or when you're voting on budget or like really, really major issue like a postal reform. And then they will keep that on the record. But usually, the speaker asks you, to rise if you're for the bill. And I've been voting against almost all the nuclear bills since I came to the parliament in '96. There's no record of me voting against the party because no one's counting it. What we do is before the plenary session starts, the party leadership comes to the speaker. My party would vote for number 1 and 3 and 4. And that goes on the record. And it doesn't really matter what you do in the plenary session. So it's kind of similar to North Korean situation.
I have a two-part question for you. The first part is, do you have very many allies in your quest? And the second is, do those cut across different parties and groups, or are they primarily within Jiminto or with the opposition?
Thank you. The Jiminto, the LDP, has been promoting the nuclear power ever since, right? So I was the only one who was questioning the policy until the day of Fukushima. So that's why they thought I'm kind of strange. I ran for the party leadership 2009 after we lost the general election. And even my supporters in the party leadership election asked me not to talk about nuclear at all. And I said, well, the pension system reform and the nuclear is two of my major issues. And they're saying, well, if you become party president, you can talk about it. And according to the public opinion poll, I was ahead. So I said, all right, I'll wait until I win. And I lost badly. But after Fukushima, a lot of people kind of realized that what they've been hearing from the ministry was not true. I mean, they're getting a lot of money from the power company, and they get a lot of information that sounds good to the power company, but they didn't get the whole picture. So I get more support, more ally, even within LDP. And probably LDP is most negative about nuclear-free society. But we promise that in the general election, we will reduce the dependency on nuclear as much as we can. That's the party platform for LDP. Everyone else said we go nuclear free. So we have a cut-across group. We agree that we need to stop reprocess now. And we agree we will go nuclear free. When we disagree, the communists will say today, some parties say tomorrow, some parties say in 10 years, I say 40 years. But in someday, near future, we go nuclear free. And then the third thing is we will promote a renewable. So if we can agree all those three, you can join the group. And it's gaining power in the parliament.
Thank you for a very insightful presentation. Two quick questions. One regarding national security. Is there a certain amount of plutonium you think Japan should maintain as a deterrent? And two, assuming you can go nuclear free, whether it's 10 years or 40 years from now, how does that scale? And how do you convince India, China, even the United States that nuclear free is better? Because I think once it scales worldwide, then you really have achieved your goals.
Well, certain people talk about keeping plutonium for defense purpose. Well, in order to do that, we need to go nuclear free because, right, it goes back to my question, where are we going to test? You know, if you try to create a bomb out of plutonium, you need to test it, right? So where can we test in Japan? You know, we can't do that in Nevada or, you know, somewhere in desert in China. They won't let us do it. You probably won't let us do it. So the first question is, where are we going to test it? All right, say, you know, you let us do it in Nevada. Well, maybe that's not true. All right, well, let's say we did it in Hokkaido or something. What happened is that Nuclear Supply Group, NSG, will shut down their uranium supply to Japan. And we don't get the uranium domestically. We import all their nuclear fuel. So if we start testing nuclear bomb, we don't get the fuel supply for nuclear energy. So eventually we need to shut down the nuclear power. And so, I mean, someone I know in the State Department jokingly told me after we shut down all the nuclear power plants, Kono-san, it's a good time to do the nuclear testing because you're not relying on anything. That's true. But I don't think we have intention to do it. And, well, if we go nuclear free, well, there are some people saying, you know, that China is increasing the number of the nuclear reactors, and India will probably do the same thing. Korea wants to sell the nuclear reactors abroad. So what's the point of Japan going nuclear? I mean, if there's an accident in somewhere, you know, the wind will bring the, you know, thing to Japan. Well, that may be the case, but I think people in Japan want it. And I think it's our job to make it happen. That's what the German politicians did. And I think it would be good to develop the technology for decommission. Now we have more than 400 nuclear reactors on this planet, and almost all of them eventually have to be decommissioned. So decommission business will be flourished for next, I don't know, certain years. And if Japan becomes good at it, that's good. Even if we have a nuclear reactors going, and if something happens in China, I don't think they will let our engineers go near there. So it doesn't really matter. And I think we need to think for Japan. And if it become good, I think you can copy it.
We have time for just one last question over here in the picture.
Thank you again for your talk this evening. I lived in western Fukushima before 3/11, and what I noticed in the culture, there wasn't a lot of responsible consumerism of power. Talk about vehicles, I would see cars idle their cars, people idle their cars for an hour, and it just seemed like people felt distanced from the sources of electricity. I know before 3/11, Koizumi pushed for cool-base as a means to reduce air conditioning and, reduce power costs for the companies. But I think the opposite side to the same coin of more responsible energy production would be more responsible consumerism of power for the Japanese people. Is there any talk, or what I assume there is, what talk is there about encouraging the Japanese people to feel more ownership about their power consumption and to use more responsibly at the individual level?
I tend to disagree with the Prime Minister on the energy issue, but we totally agree that we need to deregulate power industries, and that's what we are doing. We are breaking up the regional monopoly, and we are opening up to the electricity market to anyone who wants to join the market. They can generate power and they can sell their electricity to anybody. And it's happening. It's kind of taking time. It's slower than I would have hoped. But people now in the household now only can buy electricity from TEPCO if you are living in Tokyo. But eventually, you can choose from who you want to buy from the electricity. So I'm hoping that people would choose, some people don't want to buy the nuclear power, then they go for some renewable companies, even if it's a bit higher. So we are giving them chance. And by breaking up the regional monopoly, I think the price will go down and there'll be a lot more services. And people have a lot to choose from. Right now, they are not allowed to choose. There is no regional monopoly for like a large corporation or factory. We got rid of it, but 9 companies sort of self-contained. There's only one case that Kyushu sell electricity to a supermarket in Yamaguchi Prefecture. That's the only exception. And because there's no, even there's no regional monopoly, they don't want to invade other territories. But because we are breaking up, all the major companies are talking about, Tokyo selling something to Sendai, or Osaka is thinking about selling electricity in Nagoya and things. So there's going to be a competition in the electricity market, and that would help consumer to choose from.
Thank you.
So I'd like you to join me in thanking Representative Kono once again, and also Mitsubishi Corporation for allowing this to happen.